Welcome to part 28 on the Lackawanna Cut-Off. The other Lackawanna Cut-Off, revisited. Hi, I'm Chuck Walsh, and we're here at Nicholson, Pennsylvania again, at the old passenger and freight station. This is the hometown of historian Josh Stull, who we're going to bring in, and he's going to give us a cook's tour of the station. And then we're also going to head out. If you recall, if you've seen our previous trip up here on part 25, we took a trip along the old road. The new line is up on the viaduct, the Tunkhannock Viaduct, but the old road in part 25, we took a trip from Clarks Summit to here. Well, we're going to continue that trip from here to Alford to take a look at what is remaining of the station that we visited there last year, which wasn't in the best of shape then, but it's no longer exists now, so we'll take a look at that. And then we're going to take an unusual side trip to Starrucca Viaduct, which is the Erie Railroad's viaduct, which is about 45 minutes as the crow flies. I don't know how fast crows fly, but roughly for us, it'll be that far of a trip to Lanesboro, Pennsylvania, and we'll take a look at we'll talk a little bit about the Erie Railroad and how there was, in a sense, a competition inside the Erie Lackawanna for the use of the two different lines. And then we're going to wrap things up. We're going to go down and take a look at existing stations on the Pennsylvania Cut-Off, as it's called, the Clarks Summit-Hallstead Cut-Off. Look at the stations at LaPlume and Glenburn. So let's bring Josh in, and he's going to tell us a little bit about himself, and then he's going to give us a tour of this station, which when we were here last year, in 2019, it was still under major rehabilitation, and now it looks quite a bit different, to say the least. They've done a really nice job. So come on in here, Josh. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, just to remind us why this is why you have the keys to this place. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate that. Yes, a little bit about myself. My name is Josh Stull, and I grew up in Nicholson. But as I've told Chuck many times, I'm obsessed with the D&W. I grew up on Main Street, which is it's a street downtown. There's the business district, but then there's some residential. And my room faced the bridge, so every morning, the lights shining through the arches. So that's where the obsession began. And as Chuck mentioned last time we were here, this station on the old line was started to get rehabilitated. And it's possible through a PennDOT grant, but we also received individual donations. And I'm the grants committee chair for the local historical group, and I've been applying for other grants. We actually just received an Endless Mountains Heritage Region grant about a month ago, and that'll help to finish some of the interior work. So,
and this area is called the Endless Mountains region.
Yes, correct.
That's why it was such a challenge to build the new line there, because there's endless mountains, right?
That's correct.
Basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Nicholson. Chuck and I were just talking. Nicholson on the old line it's a valley, right? So it was a low spot, and if you look. Well, further past us is where at one point, before the cutoff was built, the D&W had a turntable, I think 4 pusher engines to push the trains in and out of Nicholson. And I mean, all this property here at one point was all railroad property. It was owned by the railroad. And as a matter of fact, it's no longer here, but just north of the station, there was an old tower that you see in old photos, a switching tower. So we're going to go inside. And did I forget?
I'll
Great.
give you this.
Okay.
So you will follow.
Yeah. If I forget anything, let me know.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we're going to start by going into the freight side of the station. So apologize for the lighting, but as you can see, they're still doing some interior work. So when the station was built in 1849, which we mentioned the previous episode, but as a friendly reminder, it was built by the predecessor railroad, Liggett's Gap Railroad, and it was used to house workers who were working on the line at the time. So that was what its first use was, and then of course it became the passenger and freight station until the Cut-Off, and then when the Cut-Off was built in 1915, it was freight only. But I always have to remind some people when they call it the freight depot, no, I mean, yes, it was a freight depot, but it was a passenger and freight combination station for longer than it was just a freight depot. So it's something that's just, I like to remind people. So Larissa, if you look here, this is where there was a scale, which it's not in yet, but they're going to bring it back. The scale itself sat about right here, and I don't know the date of it, but I certainly have some photos I can share with Chuck to show you. They're restoring that, so they'll bring that back in. And if you look, the hardware is all original. So when the Perry Contracting is the one who was picked to do the renovation work, they took all the wood, well, not here, but on the sides, and they refinished it, brought it back in, put it back in, and then they kept the original hardware of the doors, which is pretty cool, on the freight doors. So imagine it's 1925. So at that point, then Route 11 was already in, and then when they had just freight coming to town after 1915, then as you mentioned about the spur, right? Did I miss that part? No. Oh, okay.
No, I didn't talk about the spur, but we've did mention that in part 25 about the spur that ran from here to Hot Bottom, right, which we'll try to maybe get an idea of where it was in relationship to on our trip to Alford, but it's a little bit confusing to us, so we're trying to recreate history as we go here.
Yes, right. So then the freight line was on that side, but then before 1915, of course, the main line was to the left, to this side of the station, and so that there was a platform on that side as well. But then when the Cut-Off was built and it became the freight station only, the ticket agent window was still on that side of the station, but when then Route 11 was widened in 41, I think, 42, they cut off the station agent, the protruding part of the station agent's office ticket window, and they also cut off that side of the station. So if you're on the north or south end, you look at the end, this side that we were just on above us has all the fancy circle woodwork, which I don't know what's officially called, but on that side they had to cut all that off because when they widened Route 11. So, I came into the station a long time ago when I used to mow lawn for someone who worked for the local business that owned the station. And so when I first walked in, it was like 1993 maybe. Anyways, it was like walking back in time. I mean, it's like the railroad, they just got up and left, and then the local businesses who had owned the station afterwards just didn't get rid of anything. I mean, there was old D&W paperwork that I was able to get some and save. I mean, this was all a bunch of cabinets on this part. And so just fascinating. Upstairs, in the one end, they had years marked on the wall, and then I'm assuming then that means there was piles of paperwork at one point. So there was a little change because to get PennDOT money, it's not free. So we had to do a little change in order to make it a public accessible building. So this is not original. At one point, when the original part would be, it was the passenger side, station agent's office, and then the freight room. But there was no hallway here. What it was is there was a door there, and then there was a door here. So it wasn't a walk-through. But as mentioned, federal and state funding's not free, and so in order for us to get the PennDOT money, it had to be publicly accessible, meaning straight through, no doors. But when you look in here, so this was the station agent's office. You want to go in? There's no, oh yes, there's lights, okay. So this is definitely original. This window is original. This is where, the station agent would walk up and ask customers what they need in terms of tickets and stuff. This is new, and this is new, meaning the walls. Because basically what this was is the station agent was from the whole width of the building. And then before they had taken out the station agent's window on the platform side, it would have, you can come here if you want, it would have been right here. This is where the station agent's office, that ticket window would have been out on the platform. So, anyways, for me, who has seen this station through a lot in terms of, it was going downhill, right? It's 170 plus years old. Previous owners, after the railroad station sold it, certainly kept a roof on it, which kept it from rotting, but they just didn't maintain, inside or the outside. And so it's nice to see it. It's brand new, right, Chuck? Pretty much. So this was the passenger room, and then now you can see the ticket window from the passenger view.
Now, what about the floorboards here now?
Those are original.
These are original?
Correct.
Okay, now do you know if they had to take them up and put them back down again, or what?
So I don't know about this side, but I think they definitely did for some parts. I mean, I was told by Marion that when they started to really get into the work, they actually found a lot more rotted wood than they thought there was. And so I know they definitely took wood out to refinish it, and it looks like over here that's all new. Mm-hmm. Must be they couldn't say that. I mean, she was saying that Marion Sweet is a Nicholson Heritage Association chair. She, I think on one side, on the freight side, there was water in the basement, and the foundation was basically in a puddle of water. And so they poured all new concrete footers. I mean, this is going to last for another 170 plus years.
Now, I take it, I'm not asking that we would do this, but I take it we can't go upstairs or downstairs.
We can go upstairs if you want. It's a different door. We can't get. So that's the other difference is that in order to get the PennDOT funding, we had to make an entrance to the upstairs separate. But in the old days,
is there anything up there that we would want to see, I guess is the question.
That's empty.
It's empty.
No, but it's cool. I mean, that's where, when they were building the line, that's where the workers would have stayed. I mean, it's a full walk-through attic. I mean, we can go check it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe take a quick look up there.
Okay, so here we are on the second floor. As you can see, it's bare, but it'll be used for storage for the Heritage Association. These pieces of woods are all new. The side, that wood is original. The floorboards are original. And actually, when I had visited the station that first time so long ago, anyways, there was a partition on that end, and there was a partition on that end. And you'd walk through. And when I was just mentioning I was mentioning to Chuck, the place they had years marked in pencil on the lath and plaster wall on that end was on that end. And so actually, if you want to walk, well, you can look through the window and see a different view of the Tunkhannock Creek Viaduct, or as us locals call it, the Nicholson Bridge. So the renovations also included replacing the windows, because I mean the original windows, of course, were old. So it's now a pretty tight building in terms of thermal.
I have a strange sense of deja vu here as I look through the floorboards. I feel like I'm on top of the Royal Gorge Bridge in Colorado, where you can look right down. Obviously, only one floor as opposed to 900 feet down to the river, but we can see sort of down to the first floor as you look through the spaces between the boards. We're perfectly safe. I'm sure these boards are enormous, so we're good. But it is like I say, interesting.
Yeah.
Taking video right now. Yeah, you're going backwards.
You got it?
Yep.
You ready?
Yeah.
Where's the train?
Oh.
There. Train.
Okay. I'm getting off the.
Well, and as you can see, they are still doing some work. You know, there's a hole up there in the wall. They still need to put up the exterior lights, and as you saw downstairs, they still have to do interior lights. So it's pretty much all interior work at this point. And I can certainly talk about timing and like what we're doing, but I thought we're going to show you one more view, and then we can wrap up the station.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was here in 93 or whatever, in this side, there was an old telegraph pole, not the pole, but the cross arm, that I wonder what happened to it. But they had put it up here in the attic.
Oh.
You know, and there was no insulators on it, but it was the cross arm. So yeah, the sprinkler systems, they were adding in last.
Well, that would be in compliance with
Correct.
whatever,
Yes. Yeah.
requirements are.
Yeah.
I'll follow you.
Yeah, can you imagine though, like back in the day, like how busy, how many trains were coming through? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's.
yeah, see, this is all new. I mean, there weren't stairs here. The stairs were in the freight, right where we were walking by the scale. The stairs went to the second floor right there. But again, as mentioned, they had to do some rearranging. So then they put it on this side.
Any ghosts?
No, but it's funny you asked that because I was here, I think, with Marion Sweet, our chair, and we were wondering the same thing. Oh, so let's make sure. I don't know if it's automatically locks. I have to. Oh yeah, that would be awkward.
Yeah, you don't want.
No.
The chances are that it would be okay, but as the.
Okay. Yeah, we can. Oh, hey, you want to sign? the sign we put up to raise funds. I thought they got rid of it. Huh. I mean, it's actual metal. You know, it was right there. All right, so do you want to, oh, I see, you can't.
How do you want to do this?
I was going to say.
Do we have to get, actually, like vampires, we have to come out into the sun and worry about what happens?
I mean, I thought you could go further up, but the sun's going to be in the way. Because see, you can see here, you know, see how it's cut off? When they widen this.
Well, I'm not going to have you climb up on this.
Yeah, not like Kingsley.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it'll be a good shot, but...
Unfortunately, it's in the shadows, the whole building. The way that it's...
Oh, you know what? Let's just go on the other side.
The other side.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, my two young girls want me to start a YouTube channel with them so they can get lots of money. Because I don't know if you know, but like there's a son and daughter named Cammy and Mike, and they have their own YouTube channel, and they play video games, right? And they record it and people watch it. But they're also getting, they're getting paid because they have ads through YouTube.
Monetized,
yeah, totally. Anyway, so that's my girl's aspiration, for me to help them be YouTube stars.
Good for them, huh?
Yeah.
I don't monetize because it's kind of complicated, but basically I don't monetize.
Right.
People have told me I should, and I said, yeah, it's okay.
Right.
I mean, you have to have a lot of views to make anything.
Well, and I was looking for that YouTube creator suit. You have to have 1,000 subscribers.
Yes.
I have 7.
Well, you have to start somewhere.
All right, so now we're back outside on the south end of the station, and I just want to reference and show you so this was the old main line, which is now Route 11. When Route 11 was widened in the early 40s, as I mentioned, they had to shave off the edge of the station, and they also took out the station agent's ticket window, or the ticket window to the platform side of the main line. So you can see where they shaved it off versus the other side that was left original. I mean, they cut it off right to the edge. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that with the pandemic, we had to push the grand opening. I mean, as mentioned, there's some interior work that has to be done, but I would say in terms of percentage, I mean, it's 95% done. We're still trying to raise some additional small funds for display cases for inside, for possible benches for the passenger side, and what we're going to try to do is have it as a museum to talk about Nicholson, of course, the bridge, the Nicholson Bridge. Also talk about how important railroading was to Nicholson and the area, but then also, I mean, we have relationships with Steamtown and other area railroad historic sites, and so we want to work together to promote everything as a block, right? If someone's going to come to Scranton to visit, in 2016 they had a report that says they had 100,000 visitors. I mean, that's a lot. And so by working with them, we can encourage people who are traveling to Steamtown to drive 20 miles north, visit the station, the bridge. You can hop on 92, which is just right there, which is the Viaduct Valleyway Scenic Byway, and then people can go see the Starrucca Viaduct, which is what we're going to do today. And actually, we'll come back from Lanesboro on the Viaduct Valleyway Scenic Byway. And I'll put in a plug, so then Chuck doesn't have to put it in the description, but we have our own website, www.nicholsonheritage.org, that we keep updated. Of course, we have information about the station, but the bridge, the byway, and also about Nicholson itself. So, and then, the brochure. Right, so I also just uploaded a PDF of this on our website. So, do you want to say something?
We'll give the website. But yeah, we'll give you a plug. And did you say this is your photo, by the way?
Yes.
You did say that. Okay, I missed
yes.
that. I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
It's a photo I took of the station one evening from the pull-off just south of the Tunkhannock Creek.
I have a question for you. That there's an annual event which commemorates the opening of the line and, of course, the bridge.
Yep.
Is that something which is that tradition continued, or how is that?
Yes, it's called Bridge Day. It's the second Sunday in September. However, this year they had to cancel it due to the pandemic.
That's 2020, but but presuming in the future that that will be
correct,
will still be there. They'll be done.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's handled by the Nicholson Women's Club. The Nicholson Heritage Association coordinated with them the 100th anniversary celebration 5 years ago, and then the 75th anniversary in 1990. So.
Okay, so that was 2015. That was the
100th.
100th, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our next thing that we're going to do is we're going to pretend we're trained, which I had to put it that way.
Yeah.
And we're going to take a trip along Route 11, which essentially is the right of way of the old line.
Yeah.
And we're going to go up to, of course, we'll have to go off that to get to the station in Alford, because that's up on the cutoff there.
Yeah.
But that's what we're going to do next, and that'll be kind of neat. We'll give you the opportunity to give us a little bit of a commentary as we go along.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so the building across in front of us was part of the old Sherwood dealership, and at one point, of course, the cars were delivered via rail. Alright, so now we're on the old main line, and as mentioned in our video before, this was all railroad property. The turntable and the pressure engines are right here, where the fucking pantry is. Now we'll turn around right across the river. So that's Tunkhannock Creek. Oops, I went too fast. So this is the pull-off that PennDOT had put in, gosh, it's gotta be like 10, 15 years ago, or maybe longer. Anyways, it's one where we have the Heritage Association put up the information about the bridge. There's some brochures over here that the Endless Mountains Visitors Bureau put together. And as you can see, it's a pretty good view of the bridge. There's a couple good spots in town, and this is one where it's right off Route 11. And then if you can see, the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission put in the Tunkhannock Viaduct historical marker. It's amazing, isn't it?
Big.
Yes.
Here we passed the Nicholson sign.
Yep, and we just crossed 92, which, as mentioned, it's the Viaduct Valleyway Scenic Byway that goes from, I mean, it's the byway from Tunkhannock up to the Starrucca Viaduct, Lanesboro, via 171. And there's a station, of course, original station on our left, and then we'll drive north.
So basically, we are on the right-of-way of the original railroad that was built by the, I guess it was the Leggett's Gap.
Yes.
So the predecessor of the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western.
Yes, and to our left is where an old feed mill used to be. It was owned by Clarks. That is where the grain used to come via rail, and after the new cutoff, the cutoff was built, and they put in Route 11. As Chuck has mentioned, they had a spur line that ran to Hot Bottom, otherwise known as Foster, north of us, and Nicholson, and that was basically to our left here of Route 11. And we're coming up to the spot where it crossed over to the right-hand side of Route 11, and then slowly made its way up the hill, and then backtracked up to connect to the new main line. And this is where I've heard conflicting stories. I've heard that it was Route 11 that went under the train tracks, like a small bridge, and then I also heard the opposite, where it was the train tracks went under and Route 11 went over. So it's hard to. And I'm sorry, it was back there as we went that corner. So it's not that far north of Nicholson. Anyway, so if you look, if you want to pan to the right, up above behind these houses, you'll see a flat, it's the old right-of-way of the spur line, and it slowly makes its way to the new line.
So the old main line was torn out, and then, but this new line was put in, which used maybe some of the old line, but for the most part, it was I'll call it a new build.
Correct. Yeah. Because once it, up there you can see that flat, where that's the old roadbed of the spur line behind those houses.
So it's coming down.
Yes, correct. Yeah. And then at Hot Bottom, it's still it's above the old main line. It doesn't use the same roadbed. I mean, in Nicholson, it may have used some of the former right-of-way, but it was still to the left of current day Route 11, which is mostly the old main line.
Yeah, it looks like it's almost come down to our level, not quite. That roadway actually it crosses as a grade crossing, perhaps. You just saw that road that comes up.
Yeah, maybe.
And as we explained in the previous video, that when the Lackawanna built this new line, the dilemma they created was that they had customers that were on the old line, and they didn't want to lose those customers. So in this case, with Nicholson and Hot Bottom, the only way they could retain them and not have to keep this old main line was to build this connector or spur, that went to the two towns. And that way they were able at least to maintain that business.
Yeah, Chuck and I were also talking about this, for Nicholson and all of Northeast PA, outside of Scranton, so north of Scranton, agriculture was, and in some cases it's still an important industry. And for Nicholson, it used to be surrounded by a lot of dairy farmers. And so I have some correspondence from the Nicholson Station, the old mainline station, where people were contacting the station agent about farm equipment because their farm equipment had been damaged. And I mean, between the rail delivering grain and cars for that local dealership, the other thing that I think a lot of people don't always focus on, but the D&W also delivered milk. And the Northern Electric, which also went through Nicholson, also delivered milk. Not only did they have passenger service, but they delivered milk. And so, Nicholson at one point had 5 creameries. So all the dairy farmers would bring their milk, to town, and then either there was a cheese factory too. So it would either get made cheese, or they would pasteurize it and send it on to the big cities to be consumed. So it's very scenic coming up Route 11, the old main line, versus 81. As you see, not really a lot of traffic.
Spur would be where we are now in relation to where we are right now. You think it's still to our right? Or?
Oh, it's definitely to our right. Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, if you look up on the hill, I don't see the roadway, which means I think it's further up. But I think you're right. Another trip, we should just explore that old road bed, because I've seen it from being up on the tracks years ago. And I walked a little bit down it, but I didn't walk to where, it goes, one way goes towards Hot Bottom. I mean, pretty much Hot Bottom now. And the other way goes towards Nicholson. So that's...
Between the trees, where the breaks in the trees, you can see something which looks like a road bed.
Right.
It looks like, and we're now just entering Hot Bottom, the borough of Hot Bottom. What's quite amazing is that it looks as if this was a fairly substantially built type of right-of-way or a track. As a result, just to keep these customers, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, and see, that's Station Hill Road, right? And that's where we went last time for 25. We went up to see where the old Hot Bottom station was.
The Foster.
Yeah, Foster, yes.
Which we found out with my research, it was named after the Lackawanna, I think it was the division manager.
I didn't know that.
So what?
See, Hot Bottom Garage. But that makes sense then. So railroad called it Foster. And so this is downtown Hot Bottom, and in old photos, basically the old station was right here. There was a car dealership over there,
and the spur came in somehow from...
Oh, it would have been right before we hit downtown.
Okay. So now it's just mainline, right? This is where...
Yes.
So there was no attempt to build anything to anywhere else.
Correct. Yeah.
Except for Factoryville, they had they had their own. Maybe that's something we could explore sometime in the future.
Yeah, and I would do that too, because I know that the station on the new main line, was passenger only, and that's been torn down for a long time. But I don't know, which I didn't do my research, but I would like to find where that spur was. And Factoryville too, there were lots of dairy farms around there. And the railroad is what, right? I mean, railroad is what had a lot of these smaller towns. I mean, it built them up. That's how they became what they are. I mean, you look at the census numbers for Nicholson. 1950 was the year that Nicholson had the highest number in the borough. This is just the Nicholson borough, which is, you know, a mile by half a mile. Anyways, it was about 1,000 residents. And it was the most recent census from 2010. Official population of Nicholson was 750. And supposedly when they built the Nicholson Bridge, you know, the population boomed by thousands because they obviously had a lot of workers come in. But
where did those people go? That's 250 people or whatever number you're counting. Any guesses to, did the houses disappear? Did they, how do you explain that?
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's houses, no. I mean, houses are almost the same. I mean, near where I grew up, across the creek, the Martins Creek, there were 5 houses that repeatedly got flooded, and they got condemned. Anyway, so yeah, okay, there's 5 or 6 houses that are no longer, you know, they're no longer there. So that's where that is. And, you know, like myself, I mean, for what I do, professionally speaking, I can't work out of Nicholson. You know, like, my interest is government affairs, congressional affairs, and I have to be in D.C. for that, right? I mean, that's where... So there's people who leave, right?
Well, I'm wondering, is it like there aren't, let's say, as many children, for example? Has it gotten to be an older community where...
Definitely older community.
And that might explain, like, there was a school in Nicholson, and now where's the nearest school for...
Now it's down in Fountainville, 5 miles away.
Okay, so...
Both elementary and then a junior-senior high school. Which, I mean, that's where I went to. Except the elementary school that I went to was in Nicholson, as Chuck was just mentioning.
So, that's speculation on my part, but perhaps the same number of houses, more or less, but fewer occupants to those houses. And if it's fewer children, there's maybe your 250. Oh, here we go.
Oh, there it is. That's the Kingsley Bridge, Martin Street Viaduct. Oh, and hey, look, that's where you were recording last time. So, just as a side note, yeah, I was telling Chuck, you know, the Kingsley Station, I believe burned in the 90s. But I had seen it because Steamtown at one point was doing excursions up this far. And I think it was the local historical society that had fixed it up. It was still owned by the railroad. Anyways, and unfortunately it burned. But that station on the new line, the Cut-Off, that was brick. It was similar to New Milford, you know, it was a brick station. Where the passenger station on the Cut-Off in Nicholson was concrete. Found out that there's a historical group in Kingsley that recently received an Endless Mountains Heritage Region grant, which actually the Nicholson Heritage Association received one too for the station. They received one to build a cutoff of the Kingsley Bridge, a view, not from here, but up on the hill over there. So on the other side of the viaduct, you don't see the whole thing. But anyways, they are working on finishing that scenic overlook. I don't even know how I'd get there, but I can look for our next trip.
So the Cut-Off is off to our left now.
Yeah. to Alford. Yeah, I just have to find the turn.
Clarks Summit and Nicholson, their PennDOT or whatever entity was the highway department back in the day, did a lot of straightening of the road. Now this is a pretty curvy road, so I'm wondering if they didn't do that over here as much, because one of the reasons why they wanted to upgrade to a different line was because of all the curves. And if we're following basically the old right-of-way, it would seem that this is a fairly curvy type of trip here that we're making.
Yep, and then, right, they didn't have to have any pusher engines like they had in Nicholson. And then I forget the total number, but they eliminated, 30-something grade crossings, right? So they didn't have to worry about cars. Just as a side note, one of the bridges that they had built in Nicholson, it's Breck Hill. So the railroad built that small bridge so the road could go over it. And there was it's 100 years later, and it had deteriorated pretty bad. And I think it's still closed. And there was a question of who was going to pay to fix it, PennDOT or well, now it's Norfolk Southern. But anyways, it's a jurisdiction question because it would cost money. But
when Conrail took over, basically for the most part, all the railroads in the Northeast, there was an agreement struck that it did not become responsible for the overhead bridges. And that's where the term orphan bridges came from, that these bridges did not get conveyed from the previous railroad, like Erie, Lackawanna, the Lehigh Valley, and so forth, Penn Central. So all those overhead bridges became orphans because they no longer had any ownership.
That's not it. It isn't.
I think that was it.
I did it last time too. So we're coming into Alford, which is even smaller than Nicholson. I asked someone one time, how many official residents. It's I think they said it's less than 200. But it looks like it's even less. It looks small.
Okay, here we are at Alford, the sad location of the station we visited last year. You can see that it's in a crumbled state. It was actually physically demolished. It didn't fall down. It was pushed down. And you can still kind of smell the aroma of the timbers that have been cracked open, I guess you would say. There's a distinct aroma to that. It is sad, but there was nobody that was going to attempt to preserve it. And in talking to Josh, it's actually a very expensive type of process, especially to restore. Preserve is one thing, but even to restore is, it could be enormously expensive. So that's here. What we're going to do is just take a quick gander. We're going to go over to the tower, which is not too far away, and take a look in there and see what we find.
Okay.
We're rolling, so remember.
Okay, so the tower controlled the interlocking with the Montrose branch. This is Alford Tower, and the mechanisms are at least partly still here. Yeah. You can see the. I wish this is not my area of expertise, but where
the levers, right?
That's
what they're called. And there's the handle up there that he would pull, and switch it or move it to move the mechanism. And there's some more down at the other end. We can't get up there, but up here is where the stairs would have been. And that's where they still have some of the original.
That may explain why that stuff is still there. When you said that the levers were still here, I was kind of skeptical, but you're absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ignore the graffiti.
Well, we'll have to work around that somehow.
Here, but yeah.
So, did you get video going up into the rafters there? Okay. Cool.
So there's another tower that I've been to, the one north of here, and it's in the middle of nowhere. But my friend and I from high school used to walk on.
There was that one at New Milford, I believe, but.
New Milford?
Well, it was near New Milford, but it's gone now, as far as I'm aware. I think
this is a concrete tower on this line that it was in the middle of nowhere.
I think so. Yeah, and I don't know that the tower still exists.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. There's another one south of the Nicholson Tunnel or Factoryville Tunnel, just the same as this one. And I've been in that one, and that one does not have any of this stuff. It's also in much worse shape. Like all the roof was pretty bad. Like this is, still pretty good shape considering.
Yeah, it doesn't look great from the outside, but from the inside, it actually, aside from the graffiti, it actually looks not bad at all.
Concrete. Yeah. And I don't know if here, but in the other towers I've been in, there's also an area below us.
Oh.
I don't remember seeing if there was in this one, but there's a basement. Like a suburb. Yep. You want to check that out?
Yeah, I'm getting flashbacks again.
Yeah.
It's a little scary to look through and you see whatever's down below there. I mean, I assume that this is, if it's lasted this long, it'll make it through us walking around here. Okay. Interesting.
Cool. Okay, here we are in Lanesboro, Pennsylvania, on a bright, sunny Saturday, September afternoon. And so we're looking at the Starrucca Viaduct, which was built by the Erie Railroad, constructed 1847, 1848. There are 17 piers, which is definitely 7 more than at the Tunkhannock Creek Viaduct. The width, the top, is 26 feet. It's 1,024 feet long, and it's about 100 feet high. Another interesting fact is there were 800 workers, mostly from Ireland or who were Irish, that spent to build it. So I was also just reading too, if you look at the base of the arches, the stone that's sticking out, it's all mostly locally quarried Pennsylvania bluestone. The pieces that are sticking out there is where the wood, it's called false work, was placed to hold the arch up while they were putting it together until that masonry set. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chuck.
Okay, thanks, Josh. When we come over here, when we talk about the Erie Railroad, when we get into the Erie side versus the Lackawanna side, and how that becomes almost like a battle between different factions within the Erie-Lackawanna Railroad. The Erie-Lackawanna Railroad went from 1960 to 1976, and that was as a result of the merger of the Erie Railroad, which built this particular bridge, and the Lackawanna, which built, of course, the Tunkhannock Creek Viaduct down in Nicholson, how many 20 some odd miles from here. Now, how that's important is that this went back and forth, and this particular structure got a lot of use during the early Erie-Lackawanna years, and then we saw a transition, a shift over after passenger service had ended on the Erie-Lackawanna in 1970, in the 73, 74 period, all that passenger service goes down. I'm pointing this direction. I think that's towards the Nicholson Viaduct. After Conrail takes over, then it gets even more complicated. But before I even talk about Conrail, the Delaware and Hudson actually came through here and went through not this arch, but that arch up here, and the right-of-way is here. Now, the reason why I mentioned the Delaware and Hudson is because it's kind of an interesting type of, sort of an ironic type of situation, that the Delaware and Hudson ends up operating the line from Scranton, which includes the Nicholson Viaduct. And they abandoned this particular line basically because they didn't need both lines. And that's 1980-ish. Well, the reason why they pick it up is because Conrail operates both lines, as a matter of fact. It didn't need both lines. It didn't actually want either line, either the Erie or the Lackawanna line. They embargo the Scranton route, as we can call it, in 1979 or so. This line gets saved really by New York State. They pump a lot of money into this, and today it's operated by the New York Susquehanna and Western Railway, I believe as a lease from the Norfolk Southern Railroad. But that's a lot of stuff. But it gets complicated because one of the things that was trying to be done is to preserve these railroads. And fortunately, in this state, unlike what happened to the New Jersey cutoff, both railroads get preserved. There are tracks up there. It's a little, if they had two tracks, it would be really crowded, because this was only built for one single track, 6-foot gauge railroad track, as opposed to two 4-foot, 8.5 tracks, which they did have for a while, so it was a little bit crowded up there. I did want to tell one story, though, because this is my second trip to Lanesboro to see the Starrucca Viaduct. I was here, and I have to check to be exact, it was either 88 or 9, I think, somewhere in the late 80s. And during the time frame of right now, there have been fires out on the West Coast. On this day, it's a beautiful blue sky, but over the last few days before we did this video, the skies have been pretty much darkened and with lots of smoke. Well, when I came here not only was the smoke up there, but it was literally throughout the whole area because there were forest fires taking place in North Carolina. You could go, you could taste it, you could smell it, you could really choke on it. Well, the reason why I tell the story is because I took photographs, and I end up having to get the only free roll of film that I've ever had all through my years was because of my shots up here. And the reason that happened was because when I came here and took the photos, they came out with this really kind of weird, and we'll show it to you in the video, kind of greenish type of tint. Well, I send it in to be processed, and I go back to the local camera store back in the day when you'd actually send in film and you'd have it processed and you come back. Well, I go back in and I see the man there. His name was Boris, and Boris, looks at the package and he says, "Oh, well, I have some good news and some bad news for you." And I said, "Okay, give me the bad news first." And he said, "Well, your pictures didn't really turn out." I said, "Okay, that's not good news. Well, what's the good news?" And he said, "Well, the Kodak decided to give you a free roll of film, and they didn't charge you for the processing." So I said, "Okay, well, I guess that's, it is what it is." So I got home, and these are Kodachrome slides, the best you could get at the time, and opened up and said, "Gee, there's nothing really wrong. This is the way it looked like." But they must have thought when Kodak processed the film that there was something wrong with the film. It wasn't something wrong with the film. It was it was just the conditions were just really, they were what they were. It was really really smoky. Anyway, that was this is only my second trip up here, and it's quite it's different than Nicholson. Nicholson, of course, is quite a bit taller, but this is quite a bit older. So you're talking about structures from different eras, really. Built during the presidency of the 11th President of the United States, James Polk. So quite an amazing story how long this has been around. So now we're actually going to head back south, and we're going to go visit the two stations on the Pennsylvania Cut-Off, the Lackawanna. We're going to leave the Erie side, go back to the Lackawanna, and go down there and take a look at a couple of stations that's, unlike Alford, which we just came from, still exist. Okay, here we are at LaPlume, Pennsylvania. We are east or south, depending on how we want to look at it, eastbound or south by the compass of Nicholson. Station here at LaPlume. Milepost 147, so that puts us 147 miles from Hoboken. That sign over there says 65.9. That's number of miles from Sunbury, I believe. We still haven't seen a train. Well, what can I say? I mean, that's luck of the draw. You've been inside this building, so that makes you more of an expert than I am about it, because I've never been in here. It's an agway, but maybe you can tell a little more about it.
Sure, thanks, Chuck. Yeah, I've been in this station, well, more than a few years ago, and I think Chuck was reading that the station agent was discontinued in, 39 or something?
30s.
Early 30s, 30, 31. But as you can see, it's an agway feed mill now, and one thing I like, if you look at this station, it's concrete, but it still is very different in terms of design and architectural work versus other stations. Like the old, the former passenger station in Nicholson was also concrete, but it didn't have this, it's like this German or Tudor wood on the front to make it look old. And yeah, I've been inside. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's all now used for the feed mill, and there's stuff in there, shelves, food and all that others, or not food, but food for animals. One thing is, we were talking about, so if you are driving on the old main line, which is now Route 11, it's about half a mile that way. There's actually an old Lackawanna dairy creamery. I think the date on the building was 1908. Anyways, as you know, dairy and agriculture was a big deal, and milk was shipped via the Lackawanna. And so there's a creamery that you could use as a landmark to find Vern's. It's Vern's Agway. It's about half a mile from the old main line. So.
And one other thing, that historically, this station area had a feed and agricultural type of focus type of business. So actually, the fact that this turned into an agway is actually historically correct in that respect, because this, if you look at the information on LaPlume, the station, this was really it, and it still is, which is quite remarkable after over 100 years. So that's so this is one place where things haven't really, in a way, haven't changed, other than the fact that there isn't a passenger stop here anymore. So one more stop for today's video, and that's going to be going a little bit further east or south, depending on how you want to look at it, to Glenburn.
Correct. Yep. Thanks.
All right, so we are at Glenburn, PA, roughly about milepost 143. So we're roughly about 3 miles westbound of Clarks Summit, roughly 9 miles east or south of Nicholson. This is a station. I'll have Josh give us a little more background about it, but it is here. There's even an Erie Lackawanna caboose also here. No train, but that's the least of the surprising things here. So, Josh, what else can you tell us about this, about Glenburn and whatever else?
Sure, yep. So Glenburn, as you can see, is a concrete station. And the big difference between this one and the one that used to be in Nicholson is that this one also has, it was built to also have freight service, because unlike Nicholson, there was no spur to go down to anywhere else. I was also just thinking as we drove here, we're actually not that far from Dalton. And, you know, Dalton had a station on the old and the new line, but unfortunately both of them no longer exist. So, yeah, other than that, it's owned and used by Glenburn Township. So it's the municipal building, and then behind us is where they have their garage for their trucks and stuff. And on that side is where you'll see some dirt. That's probably where they keep their salt as well. But yeah.
And the original station in Glenburn was referred to as Abington, but that goes back to the 1880s. So that's going way, way, way back. And this station, I think, did you mention that it was built? It would have been built around 1915, because it would have been, all these stations on the cutoff would have been built around the same time. So we've done quite a tour of the neighborhood. Once again, I'd like to thank Josh for joining us. I'm hoping to rope him in for at least another year, next year, to do some more, because there really is quite a bit on this cutoff, or in addition, the old line here as well, that was here before the cutoff was built. But yeah, it's to act as our guide. So.
Sure. Anytime.
But well, thank you, and we appreciate this time, and then whatever next time, and how many times we do this, because so far I've just been looking ahead. There's quite a few things that are still to see that we haven't done in these videos. So that is the end of part 28. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to part 29 on the Lackawanna Cutoff.